Historically, the FBI was seen as the world's premier law enforcement agency. Fidelity and bravery and integrity. The Bureau was meant to be a beacon of justice built on a foundation of trust. And that's what the FBI was back when I worked with agents nearly 20 years ago. There was never any talk about politics. It was bank robbers and kidnappers and gangs and terrorism. It was all about crime. But public perception started to slip because that foundation of trust began to crumble. Former FBI Director James Comey said the FBI did not give a hoot about politics, but his actions told a very different story. At one point, the FBI had both major presidential candidates under investigation, but even then, the fairness was lacking. Peter Strzok was in charge of investigating a man he hated, personally and politically. Agents began to conspire about how to prevent Trump from winning or how to impeach him if he did win. FBI lawyers and agents misled the FISA court. An FBI employee altered evidence to justify surveillance against a perceived political enemy. FBI agents botched major investigations like murder and rape, but found time to pursue vindictive, vexatious cases against political opponents. Perhaps nothing encapsulates what happened to the Bureau better than what James Comey himself said when he admitted he treated a Republican president differently and worse than he would a Democrat president. Chris Wray was brought in to clean up the FBI. He was warned by the Speaker of the House and the Chairman of House Intel, eye to eye, you can be part of the cleanup crew or part of the cover-up crew. But nothing changed. So when Donald Trump was elected a second time, Chris Wray resigned, and President Trump picked a former federal prosecutor who also happened to be a former federal public defender. The task is and was challenging, but essential. Restore public trust in the Bureau. Build a Bureau that is not only respected, but worthy of respect.
Hey guys, what you're about to hear is absolutely jaw-dropping. Kash Patel, just weeks into leading the FBI under President Trump, reveals that 3 of the FBI's most wanted fugitives have already been captured. But guys, it doesn't stop there. He's dismantling the corrupt political machine that rotted the FBI from the inside. This is a man on a mission to bring real justice back to America. And guys, if you've lost faith in our institutions, this interview that I'm about to show you might just give you hope again. Watch this.
You've been on the job for about a month now, so tell us what you've seen and what you've learned.
Well, Trey, it's great to be with you, and I wanted to stay radio silent for the first month, just a laser focus on restoring law enforcement and the credibility and the trust of the American people and getting the weaponization out of there. And in order to do that, you need a strong Department of Justice. And we have a courageous leader in Attorney General Pam Bondi and her team over there. And we have to remind the folks in the American public that the FBI reports to the Department of Justice, and the FBI does not make prosecutorial decisions. We investigate based on lawful predications anywhere the facts lead us, and we work with our partners at DOJ. So that collaboration has been absolutely brilliant to set the new foundation for the FBI that we want to see serve the American people. And that's what we've been focusing on, is restoring the trust through the chain of command and through great leaders like Pam and Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche and Paydak Emil Bome.
All right, Director, you've been very intentional about moving agents out of D.C. and back into the field, which is where they really ought to be. Why is that important to you?
Well, Trey, this is my first media appearance since taking the job, and I'm glad that it's on your wonderful show. And what I want to do is highlight for the American public that there's 38,000 employees at the FBI. If you take the national capital region, as the folks around Washington, D.C. call it, the 50-mile radius around Washington, D.C., we have 11,000 employees for the FBI in that 50-mile radius, give or take. And a third of the crime does not happen in this region. A large portion of one of my priorities, fighting violent crime, crushing narco traffickers, stopping fentanyl overdoses, is happening in any town USA across this country. And they need resources in the form not just of money, but manpower. So we're going to reorient our assets in Washington. We're going to look at it strategically, as we've been doing the last month, and send our agents and analysts and SOS operatives into the field to take on this violent crime explosion that has occurred over these last 4 or 5 years. and to make sure that every state and every county, be it in my hometown of Las Vegas, Nevada, or up in Montana or in Kansas or Iowa or Maine, is all safe and secure. And the best way to do that is through a proper show of force with the FBI men and women who do this job so courageously every day out in the streets fighting crime.
All right, Director, you have touched on my next question, but I want you to elaborate because I think it is central to your mission as you see it. The FBI has really broad jurisdiction. All criminal statutes are important to enforce, but your emphasis sounds to me like it's going to be on violent crime.
It's definitely going to be a big emphasis. Look, Trey, you and I have been in government service before, and we overlapped in the House Intelligence Committee, where we exposed the largest corruption in FBI history during Russiagate when you and I partnered there. And that formed the foundation of my ethos going forward. We have to change to the dynamic threat landscape that is changing constantly in not just America, but abroad. Back then, you know, CT and national security were up here, but now we see the narco traffickers and the gangs exploding in terms of violence in America, so we see that shift. And so we have to shift with that threat dynamic. We're not going to forget or ignore national security. Never. The consequential mission of the FBI is to safeguard our citizenry and our way of life and to investigate those that do harm to our citizenry. But right now, the major portion of that focus is on sex trafficking, is on fentanyl and heroin overdoses, and is on violent crime in the form of gang murders and homicides and rapes. Every 7 minutes in this country, Trey, a individual American citizen overdoses on a drug, a narcotic. Every 6.5 minutes, a woman or child is raped. And twice an hour, an individual in this country is lost because of a homicide. That is violent crime out of control. That is a national security crisis. So we are treating it as such under this administration.
Wow, guys, those numbers are absolutely unacceptable, absolutely insane.
With President Trump's priorities and Attorney General Bondi at the helm of the Department of Justice, I don't know how or why the American public in the world refused to acknowledge this explosion in violent crime and found it acceptable for children to be dying off at such a vast rate. Couple that with the explosion in illegal aliens, we are seeing the intersection between violent crime and so many of those illegals, and that's another priority that we're facilitating and assisting with, though that's not our primary mission. That's over with DHS.
All right, Director, I want to ask you about something that I've known you a long time. You don't want to talk about, and that is yourself. But when you were nominated, I told folks that you would be a lot more fair to your critics than they ever were to you. But it's hard to forget what others have said and done. So how do you put that blindfold on and be fair even to those who were never fair to you?
Well, Trey, as I tell everybody at the FBI when I walk in the building, I don't care what the media says about me. There's nothing they can tell me that I haven't heard. As long as I'm taking the arrows and the men and women of the FBI aren't, I'm winning every single day. And I learned from your great mentorship and friendship on the House Intelligence Committee, where we served together, where we said the priority here is the truth and serving the American people. And that lesson that I learned with you and so many of the brave men and women on the House Intelligence Committee has stuck with me to this day. Now, also, I got to add in here, Trey, I know I was nominated by President Trump and I had a lot of support, but a big thanks to you for reaching out to the community that you have on Capitol Hill, and your voice was heard in those hallways to carry that message and penetrate and break through that glass charade that was, oh, Kash Patel cannot lead the FBI because he's too political. But as you just pointed out, I may be one of the most falsely maligned people in all of government service, and I don't care if they continue to falsely malign me. What I cared about is the leaders and the American people saw that in 16 years of apolitical government service, I was there to put the mission first. And I'm indebted to you for allowing me to continue in our friendship and your guidance on the Hill during that process.
Well, you're welcome, Director, but all I did was ask the senators to give you a chance. You're the one that won the argument. I just got you in the courthouse, but you're the one that won the argument. Director, you had a front row seat to Congress trying to get information from the Bureau, oftentimes without success. It's a challenge to balance congressional oversight with the need to keep certain matters confidential. You've had to do it before. How will you negotiate? Jim Jordan is a friend of yours. Jim Jordan is a big supporter of yours, but there's also that need for confidentiality and ongoing investigation. So How does a former prosecutor and criminal defense attorney balance those two?
No, it's a great question, and it speaks to the answer about how we restore trust with the American people and the FBI. And it's not just by putting handcuffs on the bad guys. I want to let good cops be good cops across this country, and that's a primary focus of mine. But on an equally important parallel track, constitutional congressional oversight is critical to communicate to Capitol Hill, where we report as the FBI to the committees of jurisdiction in Judiciary and Intel and elsewhere, and provide the documentation of where the FBI in the past made mistakes, or there was corruption, or there were cover-ups. And we would provide that documentation. The American people can read for themselves and not be told or regurgitated a version of what happened, but the actual truth. And so I've made a promise during my confirmation process, which we've upheld in my first 4 weeks here. We have provided thousands of pages of documents that have been requested to Capitol Hill for the members of Congress to analyze and take back to their constituents and respond accordingly. So I think that constitutional oversight mission is as important as something else I hope we touch upon, which is some of the violent crime and terrorists we've already taken down in the first 4 weeks here.
All right. Well, we will not leave without addressing that. Let me ask you one thing that's been on my mind. Obviously, agents need people to cooperate, especially witnesses and sometimes subjects. But the FBI seems to have fallen in love with these 1001 cases, which is a false statement to an agent. So how do you distinguish what happened to Mike Flynn and Jeff Fortenberry and others with legitimate 1001 cases? I actually, Director, had an FBI agent called a mutual friend of both of ours recently and said, I want to talk to you about something. You're not related to it. And our friend said, I'll talk to Kash Patel, but probably no one else, which told me they trust you to not abuse 1001, but they're not sure because they've seen it used and abused. And you saw it as a criminal defense attorney. So how do you balance that?
Yeah, and look, I hearken back to my days as a public defender when I was Deputy Director of National Intelligence or even Chief of Staff of the Department of Defense. All of that has formed a unique experience for me to serve as the 9th Director of the FBI. There's never been a public defender that has sat in this seat, and I think it's about time we did so. But I want to remind the American public, the former leadership, some of those in leadership in the FBI in the past years, the Comeys, the McCabe's, the Strocks, the Pages of the world, and the list goes on, they're the ones that weaponized lost statutes like the 1001 count you're talking about to victimize and politicize the statutes on the books, and instead of using them against actual criminals. I'm here to tell you that the men and women at the FBI that I've seen in the building and out in the field since I've been in the office these 4 weeks, they want to use that 1001 charge only where the facts and the law allows them to, and not where leadership forces them to. So me as the FBI director are never going to force or interfere with the decision-making process of the field investigators and the line agents who do that work on a daily basis. They are the pros. I'm going to give them the resources they need. I'm going to give them the runway they need. And one of the things I've learned in my short period about being a good leader and being an effective leader is get out of the way of the experts. And we got a whole heck of a lot of experts here at the FBI. And I will remind them that I will take the arrows for them when Capitol Hill or the media wants a target or piñata. So long as they are using the laws to arrest the bad guys, we are winning every day.
All right, Director, it's only been a month, but it's been a busy month. And I think part of your success is the good relationship you have with your colleagues, whether it be John Ratcliffe, whether it be Mike Waltz. I mean, it is a really good national security team. But update us on some things, some highlights of your first month that maybe we missed.
I really appreciate this. This shows what the men and women of the FBI can do when they have leadership who are in lockstep with the national security mission of safeguarding our citizens. Just in the last 3 weeks, Trey, the FBI has arrested and brought to justice, thanks to the Department of Justice and Pam Bondi, 3 top 10 of the FBI's most wanted. Let me just say that again. Not 1, not 2, but 3 of the FBI's most wanted top 10 are now in custody because of our relationships with folks like Director Ratcliffe and Secretary Hegseth and Rubio, and the list goes on. But we've also returned to justice in just one short week's time one of the architects of the Abbey Gate explosion that killed 13 of our service members. We did that in 1 week, flying through multiple countries and going into Pakistan and utilizing our liaison relationships and the leverage that we have thanks to great guys like Johnny Ratcliffe and getting a modicum of justice to the American people. And just to put that in perspective, those folks have been on the run for 4 years. And in the last 12 months before I got into this seat, Trey, do you know how many top 10 FBI's most wanted were arrested by the FBI? 0. That's the difference.
Yeah.
4 weeks in, we got 3, and we're just warming up.
All right, you touched on something, Director, that I think is essential to reiterate. 95% of the FBI agents you would love to have as your next door neighbor. You would love to have them coaching your kids in youth sports. You would love to attend a worship service with them. I think the Bureau's reputation, we focus on the names of people who have not upheld their trust, and not the agents, the line agents who are nameless and faceless, but are doing exactly what we would want them to do.
And they are. And I want that. I want the olden days back when an FBI agent would show up at my door, or a police officer, and we'd welcome him in for a cup of coffee and have a conversation with them, because that's how I was raised, that to respect law enforcement. But I want the American public to know, too, we've had problems at the FBI. We are going to hold ourselves internally accountable for those meting out justice who have the privilege to serve and wear the gun and the badge or the uniform of the FBI out in the field. Where those missteps have been taken, we've already addressed that by eliminating those people from the roles of the FBI, and we will continue to vigorously uphold on a 24/7, 365 basis, as vigorously as we pursue violent crime, those that abuse or corrupt or violate their oath of office at the FBI. And I will not stand for, I will have zero tolerance for those that we will utilize our badge to harm our country. And now there's not a lot of them. We've gotten rid of some of them, but we are going to have an absolute zero tolerance level. And we are not going to be hypocrites here. If there's someone in this building or in this mission that is doing harm to the American public, then the American public is going to hear about it, be it through Congress or through prosecutions. We've got some great cases in motion already, and I look forward to coming back hopefully soon and publicizing that. There is no corner on this earth we will not chase down a violent criminal, and there is no sector of the public we will not root out corruption and make sure the American people know what has happened, because that's what they deserve.
All right, I got to go back to a topic that I know you don't like, but I do, and I think it's important, and that's you. I laughed when I watched your confirmation hearing, obviously. I laugh when I hear people question your qualifications. You sat on both sides of the courtroom. You worked with agents and you cross-examined agents. I think that makes you uniquely well situated to know what needs to be done and fixed at the Bureau. So I'm going to give you a chance. I mean, I appreciate even the Democrat senators that sat down and heard you out. I think to meet you is to be reassured that whatever they may have read or heard is not Kash Patel. You have a unique background. I can't think of anybody else who's both cross-examined and directly examined FBI agents sitting where you sit right now.
Well, you know, I was blessed to have a great upbringing that led me into a public defender career and later national security prosecutor. And thereafter, I served at Joint Special Operations Command with our Tier 1 operators in SEAL Team 6 and Delta. And then I was fortunate enough to go to the House, do Russiagate with you, and then on to the White House and lead the counterterrorism mission, and later the Deputy DNI and so forth. And during all those experiences, I learned that the only thing that matters is the truth. I tried 60 jury trials to verdict. That's probably more than anybody that's been in this seat before me, ever. And I've cross-examined law enforcement. I've cross-examined professionals. But I've also put law enforcement and professionals on the witness stand to prosecute terrorists when the need arose. And so having that vision, that 360-degree experience, I think in this time that we are in, where the FBI, and we will, we will accomplish our mission, and we will hold ourselves accountable, and we will provide the transparency to Congress. But the men and women in the FBI are beloved for a reason, and we, in short order, are going to make sure we restore that by utilizing my 16 years in government service across all 3 branches of federal government, which also has never been done before by someone in my seat. And we are going to make sure we serve the American people and make sure their kids have safe schoolyards, safe playgrounds, and safe streets, and no more needles, and no more bags of heroin, and no more fentanyl powder and gummy candies flowing through because of gang violence and vicious national security issues. We're taking it all on.
I think people see tonight, Director, why I have so much confidence in you, why the President nominated you, why the Senate confirmed you. And I want to say right now, I love John Lee Ratcliffe, but I don't even think his first month on the job can rival yours. So I'm going to give you Employee of the Month for narrowly beating out John Ratcliffe. Employee of the Month, the brand new FBI Director Kash Patel. God bless you. Thank you for being with us.
Okay, guys, now before we dive into this, do me a big favor, hit that like button to help this video reach more Americans, guys, who are tired of corruption and want to see real justice restored. I want to break this down. Kash Patel isn't playing any games here. In just his first month, he helped capture 3 of the FBI's top 10 most wanted fugitives. Guys, that right there is real leadership. And it's a reminder of what law enforcement can accomplish when politics are removed from the equation. Now, he's moving FBI agents out of D.C. and into the communities where violent crimes is exploding. Why? Because crime isn't just a D.C. headlines, guys. It's real, and it's affecting everyday Americans in towns across the country. Finally, someone actually gets it. Patel calls out the weaponization of the FBI under former leadership. Comey, Jacques, McCabe, you name it. This isn't a conspiracy theory, guys. It's the documented truth. The FBI was used against political opponents, and now that swamp is being drained. He's partnering with Pam Bondi and the DOJ to focus on what truly matters: violent crime, sex trafficking, fentanyl overdoses, protecting American lives, not political power plays, guys. And maybe most importantly, Patel is restoring the morale and mission of rank-and-file FBI agents, the ones who risk their lives for justice, not headlines. Guys, you got to ask yourself, just think about this, process this with me. Isn't this the kind of leadership that we've been begging for? I'm talking about both sides here. Conservatives, liberals, Democrats, Republicans. Why did it take this long for someone to call out the rot and do something about it? If 3 of the top 10 fugitives were arrested in 4 weeks, what were the previous leaders doing for years, literal years? Why is the media not celebrating this more? Of course, we're seeing this on Fox News. No one else wants to touch. None of the liberal media wants to touch this story, guys. Let's keep the conversation going, though. I want to know what you guys think. Drop your thoughts down in the comments down below, guys. What stood out to you the most as you watched that interview? Are you hopeful about the FBI's future under Trump and Patel? And guys, be sure to subscribe for more hard-hitting breakdowns. And if you want to support this channel's mission to speak truth boldly, consider becoming a member today, guys. Let's keep the fight alive. All right, appreciate it, everyone. I'll see you in the next update.